Now it's time for the O'Hara News and Editorial. This is the show that brings you news through the lens of men's rights activism. Robert O'Hara and co-host James Huff bring you current events and important guests who will share their insights as well. We also invite the most important people to share their thoughts and experiences here on the one, you. This show invites callers to discuss the events of the week with the hosts and our guests. We want your involvement. So listen, call in, and experience the one show that gives it to you straight in a way no other media outlet will. Let's begin the O'Hara News and Editorial.
And welcome, everybody, to this edition of the October 14th, 2014 O'Hara News and Editorial. I'm joined with my co-host, James Huff.
Hello.
We have another interesting evening tonight. We're hoping to get some callers in from Maine. They may or may not come in, but the bulk of our show tonight is going to be dedicated to the topic of the election in Maine for the 7th District Prosecutorial District District Attorney's Office. There's someone that's running up there that may actually take Carletta Bassano's seat. Carletta Bassano has an heir apparent that is running against a gentleman by the name of Matt. I'm sorry, hold on a second. I'm having problems here. Anyway, there's an election going on in Maine we're going to talk about later on the show. But first, we're going to talk about the news. Sorry about the mix-up. James, how you doing this week?
Doing just fine, man.
Okay, great. We're going to do the first story tonight, one that I posted up on ADFM yesterday. The day before yesterday, concerning the University of Sydney, where students there are trying to set up a men's issues group. The story, titled University of Sydney Men's Society, first group to be blocked in over 10 years. Late last month, the University of Sydney Student Union blocked the establishment of a new student group named the Brotherhood Recreation and Outreach Society, whose focus was to provide a safe space for men on campus and address mental health issues specific to men. Subsequently, the Clubs and Societies, or CNS program, an administrative agency at the university, approved BROSO's formation and granted them probationary status as a society. However, at its monthly meeting, the Student Union Board voted against allowing BROSO to formally join the CNS program, with many directors voicing concerns regarding its, quote, narrow focus on traditional masculinity. This was the first time in over 10 years that the Student Union had blocked the establishment of a new student group. The BROSO had intended to set up a men's shed on campus, linking it to the popular not-for-profit mental health program, Men's Sheds, for men and boys that has been broadly successful since it was founded in 2007. Queer portfolio holder and USU board director Liam Kerrigan argued that allowing the formation of BROSO could cause, quote, significant damage to the queer community, especially among trans and gender queer members. Kate Bullen, women's portfolio holder and board director, took a similar line, stating BROSO was, quote, clearly not about breaking down gender roles and would be potentially exclusionary towards women. Heaven forbid. Board director Liv Ronan expressed discomfort at potentially voting down BROSO's application, saying that the founder seemed, quote, well-intentioned and that she felt it was inappropriate to predict that they would automatically create an exclusive and unfriendly space. Board director Kate Denton, the only dissenting member, argued that the board was wrongly characterizing BROSOCH as a quote, men's rights club rather than seeing it as an opportunity to meaningfully engage men on campus and help them with mental health problems. The board instead passed a supplementary motion empowering Honorary Secretary Eve Randuns to consult with BroSocial's founders in view of them redrafting their constitution and refining their aims to be explicitly non-exclusionary. There is no reported indication as to what the board meant by, quote, non-exclusionary. Again, another men's group, just a men's group, just a bunch of guys who wanted to get together and talk about the problems facing men on campus, including things like suicide and mental health problems, and a place where men as men can get together and talk about problems that men as men face, has been shot down by, of course, who else? The student union, who accuses these people just by approaching the school and saying, hey, we want this group for guys, that, somehow they're going to damage other students on campus, that they are going to be exclusionary towards women. Heaven forbid. Women have their own clubs. They're exclusionary towards men. No one ever talks about that. There's nothing wrong with being exclusionary with groups. That's the way clubs should be. That's what they are. And in this case, they just wanted a guys club, which is badly needed, obviously. But true to form, this is what's going on here.
Well, you can't let men get into spaces on their own. You can't allow that.
You can't allow that. You can't allow men to gather in groups and talk about things that affect them as men. You can't do that.
In fact, do you remember that one post I brought up last week by that radical feminist? She said that exact thing.
Yeah,
you can't
absolutely.
allow men.
Can't allow that.
Cannot allow them to get into groups.
Well, I mean, look at the excuses they're using. Well, this is going to damage queer students. How so? Are these guys explicitly a anti-queer group? No, they're just a bunch of guys. They never said that they would exclude homosexuals. Now, this being a guys group, of course, it's going to be a guys club. It's going to be. They wanted to set up a men's shed. That's for men. It is an exclusive guys club. This is a popular non-for-profit group that I've been reporting on for years now, and that was started in Australia years ago. It's been very successful, and it's a place where men can get together and do their own thing and talk amongst each other as men and help each other out. And it's been become very successful in Australia and becoming successful in other countries as well. But they just don't like this, because it has to do with men. That's the only reason. And of course, heaven forbid, they evoke, a men's rights discussion. Heaven forbid they do that. Just another really sad example of censorship and the eroding basic civil liberties of students on campus worldwide. Really another sad example. Unfortunately, but we'll see what happens. I'm not very optimistic. If we have this woman, Eve Randuns, is going to consult with these guys and maybe rewrite their constitution. Maybe we'll just rewrite this to just say no. We're not going to be exclusionary, and we're not only are we going to talk about men's issues, we're going to talk about women's issues too, as if women need to have their issues talked about any more than they already are.
Yeah. Go figure.
Yeah, sure. So that's the first story, James. Take it away with the second.
All right, this is coming out of Liberty Viral. Feminists and the ACLU and divorce lawyers opposing shared parenting. The American Civil Liberties Union is opposing a ballot measure in North Dakota aimed at offering shared parenting between the genders. The ACLU joins with several other institutions meant to keep parents from engaging in shared parenting of children. They're branding their campaign Keeping Kids First, but it seems it's more about keeping one gender first. In reality, the Keeping Kids First Coalition is a front group for feminists, the ACLU, divorce attorneys, and the State Bar Association. Divorce attorneys have a particular interest in not seeing this pass because they have a lot of money to lose if divorce becomes much less troublesome. Parlaying their tactics as an issue of women's rights and feminism is more likely a cover for their personal financial interests, and one based on the idea of gender supremacy. Measure 6 on the ballot this fall in North Dakota would establish approximately 50-50 shared parenting as the default when parents split up, unless a court finds that one of the parents is unfit. One of the divorce attorneys opposing the measure wrote in the Pierce County Tribune that, quote, "It would require courts to divide children's time half and half between moms and dads in every case, no matter the circumstances," end quote. From the letter, and I'm going to read this, supporters of the coalition, called Keeping Kids First, are ND Council on Abused Women's Services, that's North Dakota, and the North Dakota Women's Network, the Prevent Child Abuse North Dakota, the American Association of University Women, the American Civil Liberty Union of North Dakota, and the Family Law Section of the State Bar Association of North Dakota. Quote, "The measure imposes the presumption that shared parental custody is in the best interest of every child, regardless of individual circumstances," says Coalition Chair Paul Schauer. "We believe North Dakota's current law and mandatory mediation requirements put the best interests of the child ahead of the parents where it should be." The coalition believes the ballot initiative would require more court appearances by divorcing couples, and instead of encouraging cooperation, will create more family conflict. Quote, "If there's one certainty," says Alicia Ankers, chair of the Family Law Section of S-Band, the State Bar Association of North Dakota, "it is that this ballot measure will lead to more litigation, more costs, and more fees for lawyers. The only casualty will be children, who supporters of this measure are claiming to protect." Out and out lies. Out and out lies. But I'm going to continue with the article here. Townhall.com reported in the words of Leslie Luftus, who explained why children with shared parenting agreements do better than those with primary custodial arrangements. "We now know children who live in father-deprived situations suffer a long litany of developmental problems, including youth crime, poor academic performance, homelessness, depression, suicide, delinquency, promiscuity, teen pregnancy, behavioral problems, and substance abuse. And we now know that such problems are actually caused by father absence. Furthermore, there is not a single study showing current court practices, which minimize the time children are allowed to spend with one parent, have any positive impact on reducing parental conflict. In short, when lawyers minimize on an otherwise engaged and a capable parent in the lives of their children, these actions are simply indefensible." So, shared parenting seems to be the best thing for children in North Dakota. The only people it's not good for are gender supremacists, greedy divorce lawyers, and the ACLU. Shame on them all.
I'm interested in this whole ACLU thing. When did they start weighing in on the shared parenting debate? This is the first time I've heard the name come up when it comes to shared parenting.
Go figure. Look, the ACLU has always been left-leaning, to say the least.
Sure. And then you could consider them a heavy piece of artillery in this debate, too.
Right, and they absolutely are. And I have no doubt that they have their chapters state to state. But then you've got the issue with all these other groups putting pressure on the ACLU to join the bandwagon.
Right. Yeah. And these groups I'm sure they have the purse strings too.
Yeah, absolutely.
To a large extent, to which extent I don't know, but I'm sure it's not a small extent. It's just interesting. I never thought the ACLU would ever weigh in on this debate. But then again, it doesn't surprise me when I think about it.
Well, when it's put in the context of women's rights, of course the ACLU is going to be forced to weigh in on the debate. And as politically correct as they have always been, you know where they're going to, where their chips are going to fall.
Well, clearly this North Dakota ballot measure is really, there really is a good chance that this is going to pass. That North Dakota will become the next state of a handful of states that has pretty solid, a small handful of states has pretty solid shared parenting laws. And the theory goes, as R.K. Hendrick has put it, and as I would put it, that as soon as we get more than just a handful of states having shared parenting laws, and people see how good it is, how good the outcome is, that we're going to see all the states eventually adopt these laws, kind of like dominoes being tipped over, the domino effect, I guess you could say. And I think that's a pretty solid theory. But clearly, the closer we get to this reality, the more and more you see things like, more and more heavy hitters come in, like the ACLU, and more people just getting up and just, as you pointed out, people outright lying about what's actually happening, giving the public, misleading the public, and scaring people. And this isn't just demagoguing. This is people creating hysteria in order to scare the shit out of people. Oh my God, kids are gonna die. Well, kids are dying right now. They're dying because none of their dads around. It's like every bad thing that could possibly happen to a kid, the chance of it happening increase when there's no dad around. And this is the thing that these people do not want you to know. They will lie about this until the cows come home. It's a real shame, but this is to be expected.
Yep.
Oh boy. Anyway, pertinent to that same debate, Fox News has again reported on the decline in marriage rates. Coming from myfoxdc.com, this is the local Fox news station here where I live in DC. Title of the article, and there's an associated video with it. This came from the TV show, of course, but there's an accompanying article to it. I'll put the link in the chat room. The title of it is "Marriage Rates Hit New All-Time Low," and this was posted today on October 14th. New data shows more young people are waiting to marry, and there's no shortage of opinions on why that's happening. According to the latest available census data, the percentage of U.S. adults who have never been married has hit a new all-time high. In 1960, about 1 in 10 adults over the age of 25 fell into that category. By 2012, the number had jumped to 1 in 5. There's no formal consensus about what's driving the numbers, but data shows that among young adults who say they don't want to get married, the economy is an issue. 34% of them cite financial security as an obstacle to tying the knot. Now, I'm going to say this again. 34% of them cite financial security as an obstacle to tying the knot. I'll bring that up later as we comment on this. Other analysts point to the eradication of social taboos on cohabitation and out-of-wedlock childbearing. Jennifer Marshall from the Heritage Foundation says, quote, "Where there used to be a lot of social support for marriage and for couples interested in getting married, that doesn't exist so much anymore." There is also an ongoing debate about whether or not the same-sex marriage issue has had any impact. Quote, "Anyone who has ever talked about this says that there's no heterosexual couple that is going to decide to get divorced or not get married or not to raise children just because another couple next to them is treated equally and with respect and decency under our Constitution," said former Solicitor General Ted Olson. Some social conservatives disagree. Quote, "Stanley Kurtz writes about this in the Scandinavian countries where they have been undergoing this process for nearly 2 decades, and the redefinition of marriage has accelerated the decline in marriage, and I think we are foolish to think that we would escape the same consequences in America." said Tony Perkins from the Family Research Council. Many conservatives also point a finger at the federal government, saying its policies encourage people not to marry. They cite tax penalties for married couples and noting that assistance benefits to single parents generally drop if they get married and increase their household income. Okay, now here we have another example of TradCons completely missing the mark when it comes to the drop in marriage rates. Now, I'll go back to the 34% that say that financial security is an obstacle to tying the knot. 34% is not a majority. Obviously, there's some other factor going on here. Now, to be sure, most women born to women under the age of 30 in this country are born in a single-parent household. In other words, the mode of reproduction for single women for women in this country is to have a child, is quickly becoming rather, to have a child out of wedlock before the age of 30. This is becoming the mode of reproduction. And yes, they are correct in saying that the government actively enables women to make this decision, this disastrous decision. But instead of actually focusing on the real problem of why men don't want to get married, they focus on why women don't want to get married. And here's the deal. Men are running away from the institution of marriage in droves. Now, in the comment section in this particular article, it becomes very clear. The very first comment you see by a guy named Mike Allen, the top commenter, 159 upvotes. I'll tell you why marriage rates are way down. The law is so one-sided, the guy gets screwed every time. It's not worth it financially. You never hear TradCons talking about this.
Oh, hell no. They'll say you've got to man up. You got to do your part.
You got to man
society.
up. Yeah, exactly. Yes, for society.
Society depends on you.
Yeah, and they're just in this regard, they're just like feminists. They never sit down and analyze what's going on. Why would a man not want to get married? Well, they'll tell you, oh, well, men are becoming irresponsible. We have video games now, and women are giving up sex more often than they ever did. It's the goddamn sexual revolution and the pill and all that. And it's, sex just, there's no incentive for men to become married because men are just naturally irresponsible assholes, and they need a nice swift kick in the ass. No, that's not what's happening. What's happening is the group of men of marriageable age, men between the age of 19 and 30, I guess, that numbers are rising now up to 35, even to my age, 43. Some would even say, because I know a lot of people that get married in their early 40s, a lot of men that get married in their early 40s. Why anybody would want to do that, I don't know, but it happens. But anyway, what they're not seeing is that men have grown up in a world where they see the other men in their lives, the men in their families, their friends, their uncles, their dads, their brothers. The majority of them get divorced after they get married. Within 5 years after they get married, 50%. I'm sorry, the majority. 50% of them get divorced, and they see what happens to their lives. They see what happens. That they go broke overnight. They go broke. They never see their kids again. They become a wage slave to their ex-wives. They have no more life anymore. Oftentimes they'll lose their job, and oftentimes they will kill themselves. That's what they're seeing. But you never.
We lost Robert. Oh boy. Well, Robert, are you there, man?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep. Go ahead and continue.
Okay. Yeah.
Dude.
Sorry, but you see all this catastrophe being played upon the lives of men whose wives decide to divorce them, and they don't see their kids again. They become financially wrecked. They become shells of their former selves. Oftentimes they commit suicide. Why? Because of the family court, the corrupt family court system, and the laws surrounding alimony and child support. But conservatives, TradCons will never point this out. They will never look at this. It always has to be the guy's fault. It's always this very gynocentric view of the world, and we can't just depend on these TradCons to come save us. They're not our friends. the Republican Party is not going to come and save men. They're not. They're just as bad as the Democratic Party. These tricons are just as bad as feminists. They
Yep.
are.
Every
Without
bit.
a doubt. Every bit.
Well, I'll tell you, we have to define the term because a lot of people do get sore when we use the word tradcon. I'd rather use the word SOCON. These guys are demanding that men man up, and regardless of the costs, put their nose to the grindstone.
Yeah. Because that's what you're supposed to do. And that's your place. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Not me. Well, it's entirely believable when you think about it. You hear this kind of thing coming out of Fox News all the time. You have this Tucker Carlson guy, same crowd of people.
Right.
Really, they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear that men are really putting themselves at a disadvantage when they get married. That marriage has become not just a bad deal, but like the most dangerous thing, the most reckless thing that a man can do to his life. It truly is. It truly is the most reckless thing you can do with your life, get married. But they'll never, ever concede to that, ever.
Yep. Well, I've got an article here.
Mm-hmm.
This is coming out of the National Review, written by Catherine Timpf. Women are too weak to say no to sex. Thank goodness California has come to their rescue. Some people say that California's affirmative consent law goes too far, but what these archaic misogynists don't realize is that adult women are just not strong enough to articulate what they want in sexual situations. A lot of laws say that sexual assault is forcing sex on someone who said no, or who is unable to say no. But here's the problem. We need to realize that women are, in general, not able to say no. It's too hard. Oh, and by the way, just one yes isn't enough. If a woman suddenly becomes uncomfortable during an intimate encounter, she certainly won't be assertive enough to tell the man without his asking her first. Thankfully, California realizes this, and the law demands that the affirmations of consent be ongoing. Some people may think that once a woman has been dating someone for a few years, she will be courageous enough to say what she wants sexually. Some men may think it's okay to go from kissing their girlfriend to more explicit sexual contact without expressly asking for permission. But this is the normal progression of sexual activity and perhaps even romantic. But it's not romantic. It's sexual assault. Thankfully, California realizes this too, and the law specifies that having a prior relationship does not change anything. Never again will these women have to deal with their longtime boyfriends going from kissing to more, an experience no doubt traumatic to the weak psyche of a woman, without explicitly asking for permission first. In fact, women are so weak that even witnessing the depiction of a potentially unwanted kiss is harmful. That's why feminists in France are trying to get that awful World War II statue of a sailor kissing a woman removed from a bridge in Normandy where it was placed to mark the 70th anniversary of D-Day. After all, the photographer who captured the image on which the statue is based said that he never saw the sailor explicitly ask the woman for consent before kissing her, and that makes the statue nothing more than a disgusting representation of a sexual assault in progress. Sure, it's not clear who the woman in the photo was, and none of the women who might be her have ever complained about the incident or said they felt violated, but we must remember that women are not capable of deciding what is and is not desired sexual behavior. That's because many women don't even realize how brainwashed they are. It starts early on with insidious scenes in childhood films and books. I can't imagine how many young girls have been unknowingly traumatized by the kissing scene in Lady and the Tramp. Having a mouthful of spaghetti is no excuse to not ask for verbal consent before kissing someone, and too many women don't realize that. Unfortunately, this law applies only to students at California colleges that receive state funding. But let's hope the rest of the country soon follows suit, because California isn't the only state where women are helpless.
Again, you can't just be yourself with a woman and not have, this goes beyond that. Obviously, what they're trying to do is criminalize every single form of sexual agency, not just by men, but by women, to the detriment of men. This idea, by the way, that photograph that was taken in Times Square on VJ Day, it was a VJ Day, Victory of Japan Day. Those people, and I'm looking at the wiki. Here we go. Her name, the woman's name was Edith Shane, at least a woman named Edith Shane claimed to be the woman in the picture, and she was She was working at a doctor's hospital in New York City, and she actually kept in touch with the guy that kissed her right until the time the guy died. And I don't have his name here, but I know that he did die a couple of years ago. And they became friends, and she didn't see anything wrong with it. There's exuberance after winning like the greatest war in history. This young man found this young woman in Times Square, and he said, "I'm going to give that girl a kiss," and he did. And for decades, this picture was an iconic image that celebrated victory over Japan. The victory in the greatest war that was ever fought, some would say the most crucial war that's ever fought. And a couple of years ago, a bunch of, campus feminists at some school somewhere said this was sexual assault because it wasn't consent. And, that's forcible kissing. And this is just terrible. This says terrible things about how we view sexuality and all this other crap. And now, 2 years later, you have these stupid affirmative consent laws. If you go to school, or if you are a school and you want to have state money, which you rely on heavily, then you have to follow these dumb rules. Then your students have to follow these dumb rules. And if someone even so much as accuses a male student of doing anything approaching what this guy in Times Square did 60 some odd years ago, well, then, I'm sorry, coming up on 70 years ago now, well, then, he's a sexual assailant, and he should get kicked out of school, and he should be branded an attempted rapist for the rest of his life. You can't make this stuff up. It's surreal. We're not living in a reasoned society anymore. We're going down a very, very nasty path to the complete erosion, first of all, of due process, second of all, of freedom of expression, and ultimately the freedom to do what you want, the freedom to conduct you, whether you're a man or a woman, to conduct your sexual relations the way you want to, as an adult. And this is being achieved by taking away responsibility from women and placing all of the risk and responsibility on men. It's crazy. But you know what? What an ingenious way to take away freedom. What an ingenious, because no one's going to, well, very few people will question you for doing it. Not enough, apparently, to stop these stupid laws from going through.
Of course not. Mm-hmm. No, and it's going to get like that until we've got a 75-25 split of women to men in college, and all the SoCons are going to go, you men need to go to college, and all the women are going to go, where are all the men?
Yeah, right, exactly. And all the men and these people still won't listen to what we've been saying for years now. Hey, look at marriage. Look at school. Is this something, if you were a man, would you want to do that? No, you wouldn't. But they will not address that issue. They will not address these core things that we're talking about on the show right now. They won't do it. It's like there's some sort of fear or something like that. I don't know what it is. What do you think it is?
Look, these guys know, these social conservatives know that if they actually tried to address our issues, they'd have to break their own mold in order to do it. They know
right.
that. They know that they're in bed with the feminists just as much ideologically as
but this whole white knight disposable male thing is every bit as part of feminist ideology that it is for social conservative ideology. It is every bit. They don't want to talk about it.
Yep.
Anyway.
All right. Well, let's say we go to a music break here. What do you think?
I think it's a good idea.
All right. Folks, we are going to go on to a music break, and should we go ahead and take callers?
Yeah, sure. Let's take callers. Go and give them the phone number.
The number is 214-272-0408. I'll say that again, 214-272-0408. Call us up.
Right, and we'll be back with what's going on in Maine. And we are back with the second half of the O'Hara News and Editorial. Tonight, we're going to be dedicating the rest of the broadcast to what's going on in Maine right now. There is an election going on, and one of the elections is for the 7th Prosecutorial District of Maine. This is a district in which Assistant District Attorney Mary Kellett has been practicing for some time now, and which many who say for decades has been corrupt. I am going to read to you an article from Mr. Brian Danielson, who is the president of Integrity4Me's, who is supporting the opposition to the incumbents of the 7th Prosecutorial District. And the article is titled Call to Action, 3 weeks to end 40 years of tyranny. Your help is needed. My name is Brian Danielson. I'm the founder and president of Integrity4Me's, a government watchdog organization focusing on restoring integrity and the Constitution to the state of Maine. Maine is ranked the fifth most corrupt state in America. Unconstitutional conduct by prosecutors who violate their oath of office and due process rights of defendants plague this once beautiful and peaceful state. For those who've been following the news in Maine, last year, Assistant District Attorney Mary Kellett became the first ever prosecutor in the history of Maine to be sanctioned by the Maine Supreme Court for violating 7 bar rules for her prosecution of Vladeck filler. My own investigation of some 100 cases handled by Mary Kellett showed various degrees of prosecutorial misconduct. Just a year prior to Mary Kellett's sanctioning, I was in touch with 2 separate victims who stepped forward and wanted to file bar complaints against Kellett. But fearing more retaliation, they backed down and left the state. I have been contacted by numerous victims and their families who have had their lives destroyed by Mary Kellett's district attorney's office. One male victim, who has been wrongfully convicted by her office, was raped in prison while going through the appeal. Another man, while under medication for severe depression, called his estranged wife just to talk, but was promptly arrested for violating a no-contact order. He suffered a mental breakdown in the courtroom, but instead of being taken to a hospital, Entwistle and Kellett piled on so many additional charges on him that he hung himself the first night in his jail cell. I have been working with 2 men who were accused of sexual misconduct by their accusers, which had questionable personal motives. Both men are now in prison, being convicted without credible evidence, witnesses, due process rights, and even for physically impossible claims. One of these men, like numerous others, will likely die in prison. The main prosecutors making up Kellett's DA office are Bill Entwistle, Mary Kellett, Paul Cavanaugh, and Carletta Pisano. They all started out being prosecutors after being hired and trained by the former district attorney Michael Povich. Povich retired in 2010 after 35 years in office. But in 2012, he was also cited by the bar panel for personally approving Kellett's misconduct against Vladeck filler. What should also be noted in the final judgment against Kellett are examples of the local police and sheriff department's complicity in withholding, destroying, and even manufacturing evidence to help Kellett's prosecution of filler. This is not a case of just one bad apple in Maine. It is an example of a rotten apple orchard that, in the case of this DA's office, has abused countless people in the Hancock and Washington counties for the past 40 years. Today, Assistant District Attorney Bill Entwistle, a proud board member of a local VAWA women's group while being a prosecutor alongside Mary Kellett and DA Carla Bassano for the past 11 years, is running for DA on the platform of, quote, continuing the work that the district attorney's office has been doing. Integrity4Maine wants to see the quote work this district attorney's office has engaged in with impunity end on November 4th, 2014. On May 31st, 2014, Integrity4Maine hosted a historic state accountability rally on the courthouse steps in Ellsworth. This was the first such protest against a district attorney's office in Maine and one of the largest protests to ever take place in the area. Former state legislator and prison chaplain Stan Moody, congressional candidate Blaine Richardson, KSUM founder Sage Gerard, Daddy Justices Ben Boulderhide, whistleblower Vladek Filler, and numerous victims of that DA office attended and gave compelling speeches calling for change. It was a real honor for me to stand together with these amazing individuals. The rally took months to organize at great financial expenses to Integrity4Maine, with donations from A Voice for Men and the National Coalition for Men. The results were well worth it and attracted the attention and support of numerous voters, politicians, and law enforcement officers. 10 days after the rally, Assistant District Attorney Paul Cavanaugh lost the primary to Matthew Foster, a local attorney seeking reform of the morally corrupt 7th District Attorney's Office. Following the primaries, Matt Foster has been ignored by the local press, and according to sources, subjected to attacks and threats from Kellett supporters who want prosecutorial misconduct against men and families to continue. According to Matthew Foster's Facebook page, he addressed the following to his supporters. I want to send a special thanks to those of my supporters who have been publicly active in their support of me and my campaign. The resolution to continue to support me even in the face of threats and ostracization by and from the current regime is heartwarming. I will certainly remember this when I'm elected and make sure that those who feel the need to act like bullies won't be doing it under my watch. Such conduct is reprehensible and cannot be tolerated. This is another important reason that we need change and why we should never let any one group control any government entity for 40 plus years. Please help me clean up the corruption and incompetence that exists in the current administration by voting Foster for District Attorney on November 4th. Thank you. On September 15th, 2014, again, back to the article, on September 15th, 2014, I filed a 41-page bar complaint against the Hancock County District Attorney's Office for continuing the same prosecutorial abuse that Mary Kellett was sanctioned for. Cited in the complaint are 3 recent cases and court orders where Assistant District Attorney William Entwistle and his office violated defendants' civil rights by not providing their attorneys key discovery. Based on compelling evidence submitted, it took just 3 days for Bar Counsel J. Scott Davis to respond by opening an investigation against both District Attorney Carletta Bassano and Assistant District Attorney William Entwistle. Despite Integrity4Maine's extensive efforts, the local press has refused to report anything about the continued prosecutorial misconduct coming from Bill Entwistle and his office. I have personally emailed, tweeted, made phone calls, and left voice messages for numerous journalists and editors in the area, and to date have not received a single response. On October 6th, I attended the first debate between DA candidates Matt Foster and Bill Entwistle. During the Q&A, I was not allowed to ask Entwistle my question about the current bar's investigation into his misconduct. I handed a copy of the bar complaint with recent court orders sanctioning Entwistle to the Ellsworth American Porter sitting next to me. When the article came out, nothing about the scandal was mentioned. Instead, Bill Entwistle was shamelessly promoted as the, quote, current district attorney with 11 years experience. It seems the local reporters refuse to report the truth and are continuing the local tradition of selling out the community. The countless victims of this morally bankrupt DA office deserve more from the media and political establishment than cover-ups and enabling of civil rights abuse. I need your help to make a difference in this crucial November 4th election. There are two important public debates scheduled to take place, one in Ellsworth, Maine, October 20th, and the second in Machias, Maine, October 21st. The local media has refused to cover the true extent of the scandal involving Bill Entwistle, Mary Kellett, and their DA office. Integrity4Me's seeks to take vital grassroots actions for the next 3 weeks to finally hold this district attorney's office accountable before the public. Actions are to include public protests and mass distribution of literature and copies of the bar complaint. I am unable to be specific about the exact types of actions that are planned. However, Integrity4Me's track record of activism and results should hopefully speak for itself. The 3-week campaign needs your help in raising the needed funds. Together we can make this happen. Please lend your support and donate as little or as much as you can to help end the suffering of countless innocent men and whole families that have been destroyed by this corrupt DA office. Thank you in advance for helping us fight. Now I'm going to put into the chat room the links that will send you to the donations pages and various other ways you can support this effort. This is something that I'm sure everybody here listening is aware that we have been covering for a long time at A Voice for Men. We've been actively involved in what's been happening up in Maine with Mary Kellett. And we have taken an active interest to doing everything we can to get rid of her. And this has definitely yielded some results. As was mentioned in the article, she is the first prosecutor in the state of Maine, in the history of that state, to be cited by the Maine, to be sanctioned rather by the Maine Supreme Court for misconduct in office. And she's still in office. The press, and this is a thing that I don't fully understand. I really would like to really understand the mechanics of this. The entirety of the local press refuses to report on what's happening with this office. What their motivation is for doing so, I'm not sure. I'd like to find out. But clearly they have, I mean, it's right there under their nose. They have a corrupt DA who has destroyed the lives of scores of people. They have a corrupt DA office, the entire 7th Prosecutorial District, that is entirely corrupt, entirely messed up in the head. They're a bunch of true believers. They won't report on this. Is it all ideological, or is there something else going on here? I would like to know, and I would like somebody from Maine to call in tonight and see maybe if they can explain to us what's going on with the press in regards to this election. The longer that I've been involved with this whole Mary Kellett thing, the more dumbfounded I am at just how far people will go in her circle, will go to defend her, and not just in her circle, but like people in the people at the bar association, people on the judges bench, people in the media. Why does she still have a job? I don't understand it. I would like somebody from Maine to call in tonight and see if they can explain to me what's going on up there. James, can you give people the phone number again?
Yeah, sure. Give me just a second here. The number is 214-272-0408. That's 214-272-0408.
Great. I'm going to see if I can try to get Paul in on the conversation here. He just Skyped me. Well, he actually Skyped me about an hour ago, but that's all right. Anyway, he is the one who really can speak a lot to what's actually happening. because he's been involved with this for longer than I have in a much more intimate level. Anyway, James, since no one's called in yet, give us your thoughts as to what's going on up there.
Yeah, I've been following this for a very long time now. I think the entire state judiciary is pretty much complicit in simply giving this woman a pass. As usual, she gets a pass.
I mean, it's just amazing. The lengths they've gone through are amazing.
Yeah.
This goes beyond anything I've seen anywhere else. I mean, anywhere else where I've seen people get in trouble, and this includes in Eugene, Oregon, with a prosecutor up there. She ended up getting voted out of office, and the press didn't give her a break. Half of them did, half of them didn't. She ended up losing her seat. When the Jack Committee went after all those corrupt people in West Virginia, we literally had people shitting their pants up there. But now, what's going on in Maine? It's like these people formed a phalanx around this one woman, Mary Kellett, who is not. I mean, this woman is just not. She's not fit to manage a hot dog stand.
Right.
She's clearly got something wrong with her. She's clearly got some screws loose, and she's not the most intelligent woman in the world. But they're defending her to the hilt. I don't get it. Don't understand. What's the phone number again? I'm going to put it in the chat room.
214-272-0408.
0408. Okay. Please call in. We want to hear from people in Maine. Like I said, we had hoped to get.
Oh.
Hello? Hello?
Hey, Robert.
Yes, I'm here. How you doing?
Yeah. Just hit the wrong button big time.
Okay. Okay. So you're trying to get somebody else into the call, I guess, or?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I ended up hanging up on them. I apologize for that. I didn't add to the group call. Please call back.
Yeah, please call back.
Call back. And I might be able to call them back.
Okay.
Oh, wait.
Who is this?
Here we go.
Okay.
Caller, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hello. Who are we speaking to tonight?
This is actually Brian Danielson.
Oh, Brian, how you doing? I'm so glad that you got to call into the show. I'm so sorry for all the confusion earlier on today. That was my fault. I just read your article on the air, and I know that you were at a debate earlier on tonight. I was going to ask you how that went, and I'm anticipating that your article will be published. Yeah, well, tell us all about it. First of all, let me give some background. This is one of the debates that's going on for the election on November 4th. And debating was Mr. Entwistle and his challenger, Matt Foster. Matt Foster.
Yep, Matt Foster.
So there was already one debate, and there was a Q&A session after the debate was over, and you tried to pose a question about what was going on with the disciplinary actions against the DA office, and the press and the person who was mediating the debate would not let you ask that question. So let's start with that first, and then we'll go on to today's event.
Well, yeah, I asked the question, or what they did is the whole thing was set up as a Q&A forum. So they had people write down their question on a piece of paper. So you weren't able to directly ask the question. So you wrote down a question, it was handed to the moderator. My question specifically was edited. I mean, they took out Mary Kellett's name, they took out quite a bit of stuff, and it was so watered down, it lacked the intensity of what I was even trying to say.
What was your question?
It was basically saying, okay, considering the problems in the office, and the current bar complaint filed against you and Carletta Pisano, how are you going to be fixing the problem when this is all related to status quo.
Right.
So they basically said, sorry, we don't understand about the bar complaint, so we're scratching that out. We don't want to mention names, so we're taking Mary Kellett's name out. So
I see.
That was basically everything was watered down, and nothing was really. There was no. It was a softball. I mean, there was nothing. It was just lobbed to them and just thrown out without any information whatsoever.
There's also there's more than enough to suggest that there is some active collusion between the local press and the current folks in the DA's office, because they have been, A Voice for Men has thrown stuff at these people over and over again. Please publish this. Please, try to expose what's going on. And we've gotten very little traction with the local press. And of course, I hear stories like the story you just told us right now, where they actively ignore or edit or censor any kind of criticism directed at the DA's office. What do you think?
Well, it's not just the DA's office. It's how they portray any conservative in the state. If you are against a liberal in the state of Maine, then you're not going to get any sort of coverage. If you are a registered independent, if you're running on an independent campaign, then you're not going to get any press coverage. Everything has to be done grassroots.
I see. Gotcha. So this is very much more so like a blue dog Democrat thing, where the press is basically in collusion with anybody who's a liberal Democrat, and if you have any kind of opposing views, they're just not going to cover you. So this isn't just about protecting Mary Kellett. Go ahead, please.
Well, there's part of it is to protect Mary Kellett. She's very active with the liberal side of things, but just if you were to post a comment, and if you were to go to an article at Bangor Daily News as an example, and post a comment about any sort of dissenting opinion regarding the article, they will remove that comment and only allow comments that support the article.
Right. Yeah. Censorship.
Censorship. Exactly.
That's what it is. So tell us about. We'll talk more about the press in a minute, I'm sure. Tell us about the event tonight. What was it like? Where was it held at? And who were the players? Give us the basics, and then go on to describe what happened, if you could, please.
Okay. So the debate tonight, basically, we had Matt Foster and Bill Entwistle. Now, this is basically in Bill Entwistle's backyard. It's in Mary Kellett's backyard. Everyone there, they're all typically Democrat. So regardless of what's said and done, they're going to vote Bill Entwistle primarily. Now, it was held in Blue Hill Library, and it was put on by the League of Women Voters, which didn't help things because they were the same people who censored my question last time when it was in Bar Harbor. Then, basically, what was happening is this time around, Matt Foster, he came out swinging. I mean, he laid it out. He talked a little bit about one of the cases, because he was one of the attorneys that I mentioned, that I cited in the bar complaint. He brought that case up, talked about it extensively, because the people involved in that case were from that area. Now, the woman, it's beautiful. I've got video. I'm trying to convert it now. Basically, what happened was the woman actually who works in the DA's office, she's a legal secretary or whatever, tried to bring charges against her cousin, or actually her cousin's husband, because they were actually going through a land dispute.
Okay.
So she brought these charges against the cousin's husband, and everything was moving forward. And in that case, Bill Entwistle handled the case. He failed to provide discovery information over to Matt Foster's case side, and the court fined Bill Entwistle and the DA's office $300 for failure to turn over discovery information. Now, this is a Brady violation. This is something that has been discussed not just here in Maine, but I mean, it happens all over.
Right.
But
it happened in the Duke and Cross case, right? And that guy got sent to jail.
Exactly. Or even in the Texas case, where Ken Anderson, who's the prosecutor at the time, and now was a judge, and now is in prison for his abuse in the Michael Morton case.
Right. Okay.
But anyway, in this debate tonight, Matt Foster brought up the case where they were talking about this person's involvement who worked in the DA's office trying to charge his client. Well, that person who works in the DA's office was sitting in the audience, and she flipped out on Matt Foster. The moderator had to physically have her removed from the debate. It was intense. I mean, wow. She's yelling and screaming at Matt Foster for bringing it up in the debate. Now, I've got this on video. It's in the process of,
you guys have a
the file over.
Yeah, you guys have a YouTube channel, I assume, right?
That's correct.
Okay, cool. We'll definitely be linking to that. So she was escorted out of the room. What happened after that?
So, it was an awkward moment for a little bit. Then basically it continued on. There were some questions asked. Another thing that Matt Foster brought up was that the governor, Paul LePage, had overheard Matt Foster at a fair, at a state fair, where he was campaigning, and basically came up, grabbed him by the arm, and said, "Hey, listen, you're running for DA. We need to talk because that DA's office has a major problem with their conviction rates. They're not getting the job done. We need to sit down and talk."
Right.
Now, I got that on video, too. It was a great story. So there's so many sides to what's going on here, and there's so many people who understand that this DA's office is messed up, but because there's sort of a liberal agenda, there's a feminist agenda associated with the DA's office and the persecution of men, that they're just going towards. I mean, they're just like, okay, great. We don't see anything. See no evil, hear no evil. And they just keep going.
This isn't, right, okay, so this isn't, and as I suspected, this isn't just like old cronyism. This isn't like some sort of weird money situation where, there's some kind of Daddy Warbucks wants to get his way. This is actually an ideological problem that the DA's office has. They are true believers. They really believe that doing away with due process and the presumption of innocence for men who are accused of such things is the way to go, even in the face of exculpatory evidence. They honestly believe this, and the press is on board with these people. Is that what's going on up there?
Absolutely. I mean, there was even a radio.
That really is.
There was even a radio show that Kellett puts on. I actually happened to listen to the radio show once, where they were talking about this is the age of women and the rise of women, geez. And we need to do everything to protect women and to empower women. And this was done by supposedly this is a priest or a pastor, from that area who supports Kellett and is talking, and it was
really
insane. This was absolutely insane, what they were talking about. It's Maine as a state is it's screwed up on many levels with the corruption and the politics and the media not actually, writing the truth. I mean, part of the code of conduct for journalists is to provide the truth. Well, we don't even get the truth. It's a perversion of the truth.
Yeah, well, you hear this. Journalists love to say that they are the fourth branch of government, and they'll say this all the time. But they certainly...
I think the people are the fourth branch of government. I mean, some people will say that the agencies that are created through the legislation are the fourth branch of government because they have executive, legislative, and judicial powers all within that one agency. Now, which is a completely different issue. But, I personally believe that the people are the fourth branch of government because we have the power to vote these people out of office. We have the power to say enough is enough. You're gone. And people can be impeached. I mean, it's just we have the power. We are the ones who created the Constitution. We are the ones who created the Bill of Rights. We are the ones who are interpreting the Constitution now, and a lot of the interpretations are grossly inaccurate as to what really it should be.
Tell us about Integrity4Me, how the organization started. I'm assuming that that it started in reaction specifically to the district attorney's office, or were there? Obviously, there are other issues you concern yourself with, but was it predominantly started in response to what was happening with Mary Kellett and her crew? Or tell us the history.
Well, I mean, basically, what had happened is I had gotten involved with several men's rights organizations through social media, and when all of this came about, I had been approached by the SAVE organization because I lived in Maine, and it was just right down the road from the courthouse. So I'd heard about Bloody Killer's case, and the interesting thing is no one else had heard about it. I didn't read about it in the paper because it wasn't really covered in the paper. So they told me about what was going on. I mean, I had to hear about this from several states away, what was going on in my own state, right around the corner from where I live. So a very
common occurrence, by the way. I know.
Absolutely. So I started digging, and I'm just like, no, that couldn't really have happened. So I started investigating, and I started making some phone calls and just reviewing some cases, and I'm like, holy crap! Wow, what the heck's going on in my state? So, and then I started. I made tons of phone calls. I mean, I started looking up cases. Once I heard the name Mary Kellett and what she was doing, and what I heard she was doing, I started doing my own investigation. And I was then actually, after I went to the disciplinary hearing, well, the first hearing with a 3-judge panel in Bangor. I'd been contacted by Paul Elam, and I explained to him what was going on, and I reported back what was going on. There's a person, Michelle Sayazine, who there's an article on A Voice for Men where she wrote a letter I'm the one who did the initial investigation. I brought her to A Voice for Men to get that published. Now, I don't know how much you know about her story, but it's pretty intense. About what happened, what Mary Kellett was doing to not only her but for her entire family. Literally, what happened was she threatened this woman and said, if you don't testify against your husband for this alleged abuse, then, here, I see a number for Child Protective Services. Maybe they would be interested in hearing, about this abusive situation, and we'll see what happens with your children.
Yeah. Right, we'll sick the dogs out on you is what she was saying.
Exactly. So there was these threats. Mm-hmm. She also told her that her husband killed his first wife and was in prison for killing his first wife several years ago.
Right. Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
Right, and it was completely fabricated. Now the Attorney General actually threw her under the bus and said it wasn't true because she said she got the information from the Attorney General.
Right.
So, just how they operate, and this is just one of the cases. In the letter that you read that I had sent you guys, a guy hung himself in the jail cell because he's got all these charges, and he was on medication. He was on antidepressant medication, and they refused to give him in the jail the medicine.
They refused to give him his medication when he was in jail.
Right, exactly, and he couldn't handle it, and he hung himself.
Was there any documentation of this? Anywhere that they had refused to give him the medication while he was in jail?
Well, let me kind of explain to you like this. In the state of Maine, there have been 200 cases of where a police officer has had to shoot and kill a civilian.
Okay.
All 200 have been vindicated, and they were justified.
Right.
Okay. The same thing with this situation. There was no record, nothing whatsoever. That they actually said, "Oh no, he never told us he was on medication." It is the excuse that they gave.
Right.
There's another guy who he spent 10 years in prison on a false allegation. Right. For supposedly molesting his two boys. He got sick in prison. They refused to give him any sort of treatment, and now he's got a colostomy bag for the rest of his life.
Oh, jeez.
So it's not just the judicial system. It's a prison reform issue. It's a judicial system. It's an ideological issue. There's so many factors here that now Maine is a beautiful state. You go to the coast, it's heaven. It looks like, something out of a movie or, some beautiful picture you'd see on the internet. But when you actually get involved with all the aspects of how people think, the ideology of the court system, and it makes life hell for men. If you're a woman, it's great because you've got domestic violence clinics or shelters or centers that are getting $1 million a year in federal, state funding, plus their donations. And they handle very few cases per year. You're talking $1 million, and they're getting maybe 1,500, 1,600 calls or cases that they, review, and they're getting so much money.
Right.
And they have an attorney on staff or two. They have people who work with the DA's office, and this is part of the problem with the Hancock County District Attorney's Office is that the guy running for DA, Bill Entwistle, was on the board of directors for this VAWA domestic violence shelter place.
Right.
He's a donor, and there's a huge conflict of interest.
Well, let's talk about this connection between VAWA money and the DA's office. We do know that VAWA allows for a lot of money to be sent to states that practice no-drop prosecution, to train their attorneys, to train their judges and the police in predominant aggressor laws, which basically profile men who are accused of domestic violence, and never women, of course.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and
right now in Kennebec and Somerset, you have tracking bracelets on sex offenders.
Right. And there's federal government money coming in from that, right? I mean, there's all kinds of money.
I'm sure. There's always, in order for any sort of program, typically there's got to be some sort of funding to promote that ideology.
Right, and it's not just the ideology. Whenever they do something like this, whenever they do the ankle monitoring or the having a lawyer at every single domestic violence clinic or anything that we just mentioned, someone gets a job, someone gets some money, someone is able to pay their rent. So again, conflict of interest, because these things all erode due process and whatnot, as well as many other things. But it's what one men's rights activist called these rent-seeking scum, these people who are essentially professional activists or professional ideologues is what they are.
Right.
Who get jobs doing this. And of course, they're going to fight tooth and nail to keep their jobs. And hell with the guy who was falsely accused of domestic violence or rape. Fuck that guy. He's just another guy. He's another statistic they can use to justify their income. And I've seen this all over the country, but from what you're telling me now, Maine is probably the worst example of this, where you can honestly say there's all these people getting all this money because of this ideology, because of these laws. And we have these ideologues in office, but not just in public office, but also in the press.
Well, I mean, I don't know specifically what other states get for funding. Now, This is just one specific domestic violence center that's getting about $1 million a year in state and federal funding. Yeah. I mean, this is just one. I can't imagine.
And they probably have like a director and like a vice director or somebody under them that are salaried employees, and the rest of the people are volunteers. They don't get paid. And I mean, I've had people tell me this, people who have volunteered at women's shelters before. There's like probably about maybe 20 volunteers or so. The people are actually doing the real work, while the director collects a very handsome salary, the amount of which no one is aware of, because there's no accountability to these people whatsoever. These people have zero accountability. Everything's done in secret. You don't know what they're doing. You don't know what they're saying. You don't know how much they're getting paid. You don't know where the money's going to. You don't. People just give these people money, and there's no accountability as how this money's spent. And these people are wealthy people. They make good salaries. And do they help anybody? Doesn't look like it to me. They don't help men, that's for sure. You know?
And it's the exact same thing with this breast cancer awareness thing. I mean, I was just seeing online how much money these centers actually donate to, the percentage that they donate towards the breast cancer medical side. Yeah. It's like 20%, 25% at the most.
And the rest goes
the CEO is making like $600,000 a year.
Yeah. Of course, you have these exorbitantly paid CEOs, and the rest of the money goes to, quote, raising awareness of breast cancer. And raising awareness is code for raising more money. That's what this is all about. And this is true of the domestic violence scam. It's true of the sexual assault scam. It's true of all these people are a bunch of crooks. And the press does not want to take these people to task. Mostly because we're talking about feminism. Feminism is all about equality and protecting women. And, women are just these helpless little creatures that we must protect. And if you even so much as question these people who are taking our money, well, then you're just an evil misogynist. That's what's going on.
You just watched the Emma Watson video, didn't you? I can hear that.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly what the deal was. Yes, but that's what the scam is. And when you have a scam like that going on, it's going on in government, it's going on in the media, it's going on in all these private these nonprofit charities. You'll get personalities like Mary Kellett, who is a true believer, who really is a radical ideologue, who does not care about individual rights, who does not care about the humanity of the people that she is prosecuting. To her, any man who is accused of any crime is an animal that must be put into a pen and or shot. That's truly what she believes. She's not just a cynical social climber. She is a true ideologue, and she's getting paid a salary to act as such.
Well, it's not just Mary Kellett. I mean, this is the culture. This is the culture of that DA's office. Okay, because in that area, this is what's funding that DA's office. I mean, this is cooperation, and this is what is so grotesque. In our legal system, that this kind of thing can actually happen. You have to think there's so many different levels, and then I'm sure that there's so many things that are out there that happen behind closed doors that we don't even understand that's happening.
Right. Back to Integrity4Me. How much? Obviously, you struck a nerve with people because there was a really good showing at the rally you guys had in May when Sage Gerard showed up. That was a good thing. How many people were at that rally, by the way?
Well, that's kind of interesting. I mean, we had roughly about 35 people, and this is not including the DA who had. She actually had law enforcement. She was sitting. We were actually on the steps of the courthouse. The DA's office is right next door in the other building. She was there watching from the window. She had state police protecting her so that she could watch it and to protect her from any sort of, whatever.
Like you guys are going to throw a Molotov cocktail into her window or something like that for real.
Right. Well, no, she was probably worried about getting raped. These women haters that were, and then the former DA was sitting across the street in the police station parking lot watching the protest.
This is the guy that just retired.
Who retired before Commander Bassano. This is Michael Povich.
Okay. Yeah.
The issue with, there were other people who showed up, but because of, their ongoing court cases or, other things were happening, they decided to kind of stand back and they went across the street.
Not officially be part of the protest. Right. I understand.
They didn't physically take part in the protest, but they were watching. I mean, they cared about it. They understood the problem. Many people understand the problem in that DA's office, and it's just they just want to ignore it for the most part. Most see no evil, hear no evil, and it's just as long as it doesn't affect us, we're not going to pay attention to it. But then all of a sudden, when it does affect you, and this is what happens with most people, until it affects you, you're not going to say, you're not going to stand up.
You're not going to see. Well, it's you're not even going to see it because the press isn't doing its job. You're not even going to appreciate it's there.
Absolutely,
so.
And there's another side to that I'm still looking into, but there may be another side to the press. Another reason why the press is withholding stuff. I'm still trying to investigate that as well.
Right.
There's another district attorney in another county that committed the same exact thing, was called out in the press, but no bar complaint. So
right.
It appears that I'm currently the only activist in Maine that's filing bar complaints and getting out there in people's faces and videotaping and saying this is wrong, this is a violation, because most people, they don't understand. There's so many laws that are written and changed every year, and most people don't understand the law. So how can you follow the law if you don't even understand it, because it's written in a certain way, and it's always changing.
What are you hoping to accomplish before the election as far as actually getting the word out to people about what's going on with the DA's office? Obviously, as we've been discussing at length, that the press is certainly not going to do their job, but you're hoping to get some boots on the ground, do some serious grassroots activism, and actually start passing out literature to people, start educating people in key areas that there's something wrong with the district attorney's office and that it needs to change. How are you going to do that, and what do you hope to accomplish by that? What's the goal as far as saturation?
Here's part of the problem. I mean, and this is something I've always believed in, is that you need to have an educated voter.
Right.
If you're voting specifically just because, I'm a Democrat, I'm going to vote Democrat, or I'm a Republican, I'm just going to vote Republican every time without actually analyzing the facts of what's going on, then we're not doing our due diligence to solve the problems in society. So what I'm trying to accomplish is, I need to do a huge Facebook campaign to get a lot of these messages out there. I need to, my bar complaint was 41 pages. I've given it to 3 or 4 different reporters. I've sent it to editors. No one even wants to touch it. So I need to do a grassroots campaign where I am sending out flyers. I am sending out the bar complaint. I need to make copies. There's so many things that I need to do. Now, there's 2 major debates coming up. One is Ellsworth, which is the biggest city in Hancock and Washington County, so it's very important for the election. Now, typically, historically, the person who wins Ellsworth is the person who takes the whole enchilada. I mean, they win. It's going to be very important, and that's on the 20th. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to get some people to come out, hold some signs, hand out literature. I need to do a massive printing because I can't get the press to cover it. Now tonight there were 2 reporters there, one for the Ellsworth American and one for a place called the Weekly Packet, which is the little tiny local place that actually they published an op-ed from a local lawyer who wrote specifically the three cases that I cited in the bar complaint. So he went out of the line. I mean, he completely. I mean, this is unethical technically for a lawyer to go out and publicize this stuff, but he sees there's so much corruption that there has to be someone to speak up from the legal community, and he felt it in his heart that this is what he had to do.
Right. Is this the gentleman that ran for? I'm sorry. This is the guy. I'm sorry. What was his name? He wrote an op-ed piece, right?
This is Stephen Juskowicz. He ran against Bill Entwistle. He barely lost to Bill Entwistle.
Right.
Things would have been much easier if it was Bill Entwistle and Stephen Juskowicz. If Matt Foster and Stephen Juskowicz were the two sides, because that completely eliminates everyone out of that office.
Right. Gotcha.
Now, there's quite a few rumors that are going around that a couple of the current assistant district attorneys have been looking for jobs elsewhere because they don't think there's a chance that Bill Entwistle is going to get in. But according to a lot of information that I've had recently, is not only is there are people out there campaigning for Bill Entwistle, but there are people personally threatening Matt Foster so that he does not win.
What kinds of threats has he been receiving?
Well, I can't really elaborate specifically. I've only heard certain rumors, nothing that I could actually understand or explain. So, but my understanding is not only is it coming from the current DA's office, but other local DA's offices who were supportive of the culture of misconduct in that office.
All right.
And this is something. Well, this is something that Matt Foster, and I quoted him in that in the article that you read, specifically him talking a little bit about what was going on. Now,
right.
Like I said, I can't really confirm anything. I don't want to overstep my boundary and say too much, but this is the kind of thing that happens here in Maine. Now, obviously, with the employee who completely went off the deep end in the debate tonight, she's part of the problem. She understands that there's certain things, there's certain powers that a district attorney's office has that, most people could only dream of having that sort of power.
Right.
And it's very grotesque in what they can and will do to mostly men. Now, I was reading an article that, there are tens of thousands of wrongfully convicted men every year in the United States. Tens of thousands. In Ohio alone, I think there was like 10,000 a year. So we're talking, probably 60, 70,000 wrongfully convicted men in the United States every year.
Right.
And this local, district attorney's office, okay, we're gonna jump on that bandwagon and we're just gonna start doing it. They don't care how many people they destroy. They don't care if they have to jump over Michelle Sayazane, threaten a woman to get to their man. It's like that old saying, the marshal's always going to get his van. It's the same concept. They don't care. It's an agenda, and they don't care how many families they destroy. There are families here who they have to go on welfare because they've had to spend so much money in legal fees. I'm helping this woman whose husband is in jail right now, who she's about to lose her house because she's had to jump into his 401k to pay for legal fees on a false allegation from 20 plus years ago. It's insane. And then the district attorney in another county says, yes, this is the new norm. No witnesses, no evidence. Here's your no due process. Here's your conviction. Just testimony alone is enough to get men convicted in Maine, even when the testimony or the evidence has changed, been deleted, or whatever. Everything just goes away, and they will convict you because the media has taken the side of these prosecutors, and they censor the media. They censor the comments. They get people to believe. I mean, this is very Orwellian in the fact that you're getting people to believe falsehoods based on an agenda.
When the facts don't fit the narrative, you change the facts. That's a basic Orwellian tactic, I guess you could call it. That's what happens, and it amazes me that the press is so complicit in this case in Maine. This is something that I don't fully understand, and like you said, you mentioned there's some things you want to try to discover before you can talk more about that. But I'll be very interested to hear what exactly the relationship between the press and the DA's office is. But here's my take on this whole thing. There's a lot of money and a lot of political power to be gained by doing away with due process rights. Doing away with due process, that's political power. A lot of political power. And this whole thing, this whole hysteria with the Violence Against Women Act and all that's just a lot of money coming down the pike. A lot of money. A lot of people, their livelihoods depend on this.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
all these people are cynical to a man. They all are. They're either cynical or they're true believers. One or the other. And the two there's a very fine line between the two. James, let's do another music break real quick to see if we can get some other callers in. And then we'll be back with Brian. Our call-in number is 207. I'm sorry, that's not the right phone number. The call-in number is, let me get it here. James, give us a call-in number. I just lost it for some reason.
Oh, okay. Number is 214-272-0408. I'll say that again, 214-272-0408.
Give us a call, people. And we're back. Again, the call number is 214-272-0408. That's 214-272-0408. And we do have one caller. Of course, we have Iron John, a very faithful listener to the show, and a frequent caller in. John, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Bob. How are you?
I'm doing great. So you have a question for Mr. Danielson?
Yes. Hello, Mr. Danielson. How are you this evening?
I am great. I'm ecstatic of what actually happened in that debate tonight. So lay it on me. What questions do you have for me?
Oh, well, I guess the bottom line for me is, what do you think the odds are for Matt Foster winning this election?
Well, here's the thing. Now, the press has been covering up for him for that office for quite some time. Now, it is getting out there slowly but surely that this office is corrupt. It's continuing their practices. He has a very, very good chance of getting in. Now, I'm looking at it like maybe, it's a 60-40 split right now because, there's a big population. I mean, the strange thing is you have Republicans and Democrats who are within that office supporting Entwistle, who's in the office. Now, if it was the other way around, you would probably suspect, well, there's some sort of problem. But the press doesn't cover that, so that's where I'm coming in, and I did the investigation. I've been investigating that office for over 2 years now, talking to hundreds of people, and just it really breaks my heart as to how terrible this DA's office has affected the community. I mean, people are losing their businesses. They're losing, their 401k, their retirement. It's people are starting to understand now. It wasn't until the Black Filler case, where Mary Kellett was disciplined, that people really started to wake up and have hope. I mean, it had been 40 years of the same prosecutor system. I mean, Michael Povich was the prosecutor for 35 years. Then you had Bassano for 4 years. Now, Matt Foster ran against Bassano 4 years ago and barely lost. I mean, it was like a couple hundred votes difference. Now, this time around, you're going to see a big change. There's going to be, people who are upset. The worst, the thing is, people, whether it's Democrat, Republican, they hate liars. And basically right now, once the press picks up and the people, the citizens of Hancock and Washington County pick up that this office are liars, they're gonna vote for Republican, which is Matt Foster. Now, even though a DA is supposed to be nonpartisan, it's still set up. Unfortunately, it's still set up as a partisan issue. So people don't understand it. The law is the law. It doesn't matter,
it
left
is
or
in
right.
every election in every county.
Exactly. So it's Matt Foster has I'd say he has a better chance this time around than he had last time. He has more exposure. The guy, he was in the military. He was a medic in the military. He was a city councilman. He's also an attorney with a lot of criminal experience. He has the capability to manage that office. And he has stated in these debates he is going to make changes. He's going to rid the plague, the cancer of that office, and that's basically going to mean removing everybody in there and getting people in there he trusts. Because if you get some of the same people in there, then there's no assurance that they're going to follow him. It's going to be adversarial the entire way. So Matt Foster, right now, I'm thinking he's got a 60% chance of getting in there. I'd like to see it be 80% chance, and that's what I'm trying to accomplish, is to get the message out there and to do a grassroots campaign where I can expose the corruption, because technically lawyers are not allowed to talk about. I mean, they're threatened by the Bar Association and other avenues where it could be very difficult for them to win another case. So I'd like to be able to take that front and to make it easier for Matt and for, there's a couple other prosecutors that I'm planning to go against as well, and it takes time. It's like in football, one game at a time. Well, the game right now is Hancock and Washington County DA's office. There's a couple other games that I need to play here in the future. It needs to come down now. This is the best opportunity now. It needs to get done.
Oh, I certainly hope it does. Assuming Matt Foster does win the election and he decides to clean house, and I certainly hope both of those things happen, he is going to be facing some, well, at least in my estimation, my opinion, some very bad people who have a track record of doing some very bad things. What do you anticipate that the people in the office that he would like to get rid of, what do you think they'll do when they're faced with him as the leader?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, they're kind of stuck under the same ethical rules that any attorney, pretty much in any state, is faced with. You're looking at right now. I know of two of the current assistant district attorneys who are seeking positions elsewhere. Now, with this bar complaint, which currently has an open investigation, the Board of Overseers has opened up an investigation based on my bar complaint. After 3 days, it took them 3 days to look it over and say, yeah, there's a problem. So they've opened this up 3 days later and has ordered Bill Entwistle and Carletta Bassano to file a written explanation of their actions in that DA's office. So what's going to happen is there's two people right now who I know are seeking positions elsewhere because their career's basically over. If they don't find a position soon, it's going to mean pretty much the end of their career. Now, according to Justice Alan Gorman, who handled the disciplinary hearing for the judgment against Mary Kellett, she basically said that Mary Kellett is not employable anywhere else except for that DA's office.
Absolutely not.
Okay, that if
based on her aptitude alone.
If she was to seek employment elsewhere, she's going to get turned down because she has a sanction against her, and they're not going to want that sort of baggage. Okay? Now, this whole office has baggage, major baggage. So, it's going to be very difficult for them to really do anything. They could go into teaching, going down to South Portland, Maine, and maybe, trying to get a job as a law school teacher, a professor. Who knows? Now, I do know of one of the rumor for one of the assistant district attorneys is seeking a position at one of the local colleges. So, well, you have to. It's still giving them that sort of platform allows them to promote this sort of crazy ideology. Now, I took a class not that long ago. It was a sociology of families class where the class was taught from a feminist perspective. Now, I was kicked out of that class for dissenting opinion. Now, the reason why I had this dissenting opinion was that the class was taught from the perspective of all men are bad for the family, that any problem in the family was the men's fault, and women could never have equality within a relationship. So you're screwed. No matter what the woman does, she's never going to have equality, so she should stop looking for a man. But here is your lesbian option, because now we have women who, lesbian couples who can marry, and lesbian couples who can adopt children, and everything's looking better for women because there's this lesbian outlet.
Too bad that these same-sex couples are going to face the exact same pitfalls that heterosexual couples have been facing in family law courts and, of course, with domestic violence disputes. They are not going to spare these folks the same treatment.
We hope. We hope that's the truth.
Well, I was probably because, if they weren't prosecuted, then there would be no reason for all these people to get federal dollars to do all this corrupt prosecuting and this domestic violence industry thing. Listen, gentlemen, we actually the show's over. We're out of time. It's now 11 o'clock, so we got to end the show. Mr. Danielson, thank you so much for calling in. I'm so glad that you called in. This has been a great show. You made the show for us. I was scared that we weren't going to hear from anybody up there, but I'm so glad you called in. And let's definitely keep in touch. I definitely want to cover what's going on as much as possible in the coming weeks, because I really believe that if Mary Kellett were to be removed from office, elected out of office, essentially, this would mark a serious victory for so many people that have been so involved with her and what's been going on with Vladik Filler. It would mark a great victory for a lot of people, and it would send a huge message that there is a movement out here called the men's rights movement who are taking this kind of stuff seriously, and we're going to do something about it. And I'm very optimistic about what's happening, but definitely want to help in any way I can to press the issue as far and as hard as we can. And I thank you so much for calling in. I really do. And let's keep in touch.
Absolutely. I mean, I enjoyed it. Maine really needs everyone's help right now, because if we can do it here in Maine, if we can get funding and we can destroy what's going on here in this crazy feminist alternate universe, we have the ability to do it anywhere. And I'm hoping people will donate so that we can solve this problem here. It's one step at a time, one county at a time, but we're going to get it done.
Great. All right. John, you still on the line?
I sure am, Bob.
Great. We'll let you take out the show. You got any advice for our listeners?
Absolutely. Take the red pill.